I was 6 years old when my life was split into two halves, before and after the accident. My parents were gone in an instant, and before I could even understand what grief meant, I was sent to live with my uncle and his wife. Everyone said I was lucky. My uncle was rich, powerful, respected. People in our community called him generous, a man who had stepped up to take care of his late brother's only child. But behind the polished smiles and fancy dinners, I was nothing more than a shadow in their perfect world. The mansion I moved into was enormous, yet it never felt like home. The walls echoed with silence, the kind that makes you feel like you don't belong. My aunt treated me politely in front of guests, but once they were gone, her words cut sharper than any slap. "We took you in, Lena. The least you can do is help around the house." At first I thought it meant kindly, that helping was my way of saying thank you. But helping turned into cleaning, scrubbing, serving meals, washing clothes, and running errands. By the time I was 12, I was the one keeping that house running, while my cousin Claire floated through life like a princess. Claire was everything they adored, beautiful, spoiled, and loud. She had her own bathroom, her own driver, and her own world. When she wanted something, she got it. When I wanted something, I was told I didn't need it. "Why would you want that?" my aunt would sneer whenever I asked for something simple. "A book, a new pair of shoes, a little spending money. You should be grateful you even have a roof over your head." Grateful. That word became a leash around my neck. At school, I watched Claire surrounded by friends while I blended into the background. I learned to speak less, smile less, take up less space. Every time I tried to stand up for myself, my aunt's voice would ring in my head, reminding me I didn't belong. The company my uncle owned was the same one my father helped build. His name was still etched on the company plaque in the lobby, but no one ever mentioned him. Not at the dinner table, not on anniversaries, not even when I asked. My uncle would just clear his throat and say, "Your father was a good man. Now finish your meal." And that was that. Years passed in a blur of chores and silence. My only comfort was in small things, reading old books left in the attic, sneaking out to sit under the garden lights when everyone was asleep, pretending the stars could hear me. I'd whisper my dreams to them, that one day I'd have my own place, my own life, somewhere far away from this house that never wanted me. But even those dreams felt fragile, like they could be taken from me at any moment. When I turned 20, I didn't expect much. Birthdays were never celebrated for me. Still, a part of me, the part that refused to die, hoped maybe this year would be different. Maybe they'd at least remember. That morning, I woke up early, made breakfast, and set the table. Claire came down wearing a silk robe, scrolling on her phone. My aunt followed, complaining about a board meeting. My uncle sat down and asked about his schedule. Not a single word about me. Not a glance. Not even a polite good morning. I served them quietly, my heart pounding against my ribs, waiting for someone to notice. But they didn't. When breakfast was over, my aunt handed me her cup and said, "Lena, don't forget to clean the guest room. Claire's friends are coming over tonight." That was it. My 20th birthday, and I was cleaning for a party I wasn't invited to. That night, as laughter filled the house, I sat alone in my small room, staring at the family photos on the wall. Every picture was perfect. My uncle, my aunt, Claire smiling in front of the company's building, on vacations, at dinners. Not one photo had me in it. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't a daughter in this house. I wasn't family. I was just the help. And maybe that was exactly how they wanted it. Days in that house started blending together. Chores, silence, and pretending not to hear the laughter echoing from Claire's room. But something inside me had changed after that birthday. The quiet acceptance I'd lived with for years began to turn into something else. Curiosity. I started remembering pieces of my childhood, flashes of memories I hadn't thought about in years. My father's office, his deep voice saying, "You'll understand all this one day, Lena." The sound of a typewriter, the Golden Company logo on his desk. I remembered visiting the building with him once, everyone greeting him with respect, smiling when they saw me holding his hand. He wasn't just another employee there, he owned it. And yet, after his death, I had nothing. No savings, no inheritance, not even a save-sake. My uncle took me in immediately, and from that day on, no one ever talked about what my father left behind. At first, I thought it was just how things were supposed to be. But now, with the weight of years pressing down, it started to feel wrong. One night, when everyone was asleep, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I sat on my bed staring at the small box of old papers I'd kept from my parents. Birth certificates, a faded family photo, and a single business card, R. Caldwell Industries, the company that now belonged entirely to my uncle. My pulse quickened. My father's name was Richard Caldwell, and my uncle was Robert Caldwell. My father was the founder, but somehow the company now bore only my uncle's name. That couldn't just be coincidence. I started sneaking around the house at night, quietly checking old drawers, locked cabinets, anywhere that might hold a clue. My aunt was meticulous about keeping everything in order, but the more organized things looked, the more I felt something was being hidden. After a few nights of searching, I found an old folder buried in the storage room, dusty, thick, labeled with faded ink, Caldwell Holdings, 2004-2006. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were partial financial records, letters, and reports, all signed by my father. He was clearly the majority shareholder. But what stood out most were the missing pages, sections ripped out, entire reports gone. It didn't make sense unless someone wanted them gone. Over the next few days, I started asking subtle questions around the company whenever I ran errands for my uncle. A few older employees still remembered my father fondly. One of them, a kind accountant named Mr. Harris, lowered his voice when I asked about the company's early days. "Your father built most of this place, you know," he said quietly. "Your uncle handled the logistics, but the ideas, the partnerships, that was Richard." I asked him what happened to my father's shares after the accident. He frowned. "That, I can't say for sure. After the funeral, everything changed. Documents were sealed. Some of us thought you'd inherit his part one day, but..." He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder. "Be careful what you ask. Some questions make powerful people nervous." That night, I stayed late at the company's small library, flipping through archive files. I wasn't supposed to be there, but Mr. Harris discreetly left the door unlocked for me. The more I read, the stranger things became. I found an old board memo that mentioned a temporary transfer of majority shares after my father's death, but it didn't say to whom. When I returned home, I noticed something chilling. The next morning, my uncle had changed the security password for the office computer I used for errands. Then the next day, my aunt told me not to waste time in the company library anymore. They knew. And the more they tried to stop me, the more certain I became that they were hiding something. I started working secretly with two employees who had always been kind to me, Mr. Harris and a young intern named Mara. We met late at night in one of the unused meeting rooms, going through whatever files we could find. Every new document painted the same picture. My father had been the true owner of the company, and after his death, control had temporarily shifted to my uncle until I turned 21. It felt like my entire life had been a carefully crafted illusion. Then one night, while reading through a stack of dusty legal binders, I saw something that made my breath catch. A clause, hidden deep within a contract between my father and my uncle. In the event of sudden death of one or both founders, ownership of all company shares and estate shall be transferred according to pre-signed testamentary instruction. I froze. Testamentary instruction. That meant a will. And if that will still existed, this could change everything. I could barely feel my hands as I turned the last brittle page. The air in the small office was thick with dust and silence, but my pulse thundered in my ears. There it was, the company's founding document, yellowed and creased, but still legible. And right under the signatures, written in my father's bold handwriting, was the truth I'd been searching for. My father and my uncle had co-owned the company, the one that now bore only my uncle's name. But as I traced the lines with my finger, my breath caught. My father had owned 85% of the shares, 85. My uncle's ownership was barely a fraction in comparison. All those years of watching him play the role of the powerful patriarch, pretending everything he had was rightfully his, it was all a lie. I read the next section carefully, my heart pounding harder with each word. In the case of the father's sudden death, all assets shall pass to the surviving spouse. But if both parents die before the child reaches legal age, the estate shall be temporarily transferred to the brother until the child turns 21. I leaned back, the chair creaking beneath me as the weight of those words settled in. It wasn't just a business arrangement. It was my life, my father's entire legacy locked away under someone else's name. Everything my uncle controlled, every cent he spent, every property he flaunted, it still belonged to me. I sat there for a long time, the paper trembling between my fingers. A mix of rage and disbelief swirled inside me. My father had never intended to protect me. He had used my parents' deaths to take everything. But if I knew this now, that meant he probably knew it too. I folded the document carefully and slipped it into my bag. From that moment on, I knew I couldn't let him suspect a thing. The next morning, I forced myself to act normal. I cleaned the house, served breakfast, and smiled faintly when Claire made her usual snide remarks about how I'd never fit in. My aunt barked orders about chores while she sipped her imported coffee. I nodded and obeyed, even though every nerve in my body screamed. But inside, I was planning. At the company, I approached Mr. Harris again, the older accountant who had always treated me with a little more kindness than the others. I showed him the document. He stared at it for a long moment before sighing, the guilt in his eyes impossible to miss. Your father trusted your uncle completely. He thought this clause would protect you. He never imagined Robert would twist it. The words hit me like a blow. Then I need to protect myself now, I whispered. Over the next few weeks, I started gathering everything I could. Copies of old contracts, digital records, and proof of my father's ownership. Mara, a young intern who had seen how hard I worked, offered to help. Together, we pieced together years of hidden transactions and quiet theft. But I knew it was only a matter of time before my uncle noticed. One evening, I returned home late after spending hours at the office. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Usually Claire would be blasting music and my aunt would be gossiping on the phone, but that night all I heard was the soft hum of the chandelier and the faint tinking of the grandfather clock in the hall. As I walked past my uncle's study, I heard a voice, low, controlled, and sharp. His. I froze, my hand hovering near the doorframe. We can't let her turn 21, he said, his voice slicing through the silence. Once that happens, everything's gone. My heart stopped. I stepped closer, pressing myself against the wall, listening. I don't care how it's done, he continued, his tone colder now. She cannot find out, and she cannot be here when the time comes. My stomach twisted. He knew everything. I backed away quietly, my body trembling as I climbed the stairs. When I reached my room, I locked the door and slid down against it, the weight of his words crushing me. For years, I'd endured their cruelty because I thought I had no choice, but now I realized I was living in the house of someone willing to destroy me to keep his stolen empire. I stared out the window, the city lights shimmering faintly in the distance. My reflection stared back, tired, scared, but no longer powerless. 3 months. That's all I had until my 21st birthday. 3 months until everything became mine again, if I survived long enough to see it. I took a deep breath and whispered into the darkness. He thinks he can stop me, but I'm done being afraid. Then I turned back to my desk, spread the papers out once more, and started planning, not as the forgotten girl of the Calvi family, but as the rightful heir ready to take back everything they stole from me. The days after overhearing that call felt like living inside a ticking clock. Every minute reminded me that my 21st birthday wasn't just a date, it was a deadline. I couldn't confront him yet. I had to play the part, the quiet, obedient niece who owed everything to her gracious uncle. Every "yes, uncle" and every forced smile was a disguise, hiding the war I was fighting behind the scenes. At the company, I started to notice things that once seemed normal but now screamed of deceit. The sudden lost records, the new signatures that didn't quite match, the unexplained withdrawals labeled as charity allocations. And then there was Claire, strutting around the office as if she owned the place, talking about her father's company like it was her birthright. One night, while reviewing old transaction reports, I noticed something chilling. Offshore transfers, all tied to accounts I didn't recognize. But the biggest shock was a new document draft naming Claire as the successor and beneficiary of several major company holdings. He wasn't just managing what was mine, he was stealing it, piece by piece. I knew I couldn't take this to the authorities without proof, so I needed the real documents, the ones my father signed. So I began working closely with the only people I could trust, 2 longtime employees, Daniel and Mrs. Avery. They had been with my father since the company's early days. Daniel stayed late with me after everyone left, helping me sift through endless archives. "Your father was meticulous," he'd say. "If anyone could outsmart your uncle, it's him." Through paperwork. We found fragments, notes, drafts, legal letters from the company's founding. Each one pointed toward one thing. There was an original signed clause hidden somewhere. One my uncle could never destroy or alter without exposing himself. But the closer we got, the more paranoid he became. He started visiting the office unexpectedly. His eyes lingered on me longer. Once he cornered me in the hallway, his voice low but sharp. "Lena, I hope you're not wasting company time digging through things that don't concern you." I smiled weakly. "Just cleaning old files, Uncle. You taught me well. Don't let dust gather where value hides." He didn't laugh. He just stared, the corner of his mouth twitching before he turned and left. After that, he doubled security around the archives. But that only confirmed what I already knew. The clause had to be there. The tension at home thickened too. My aunt suddenly acted as if she cared, insisting I take time off work. Claire started making snide remarks at dinner about how some people don't know their place. Every bite I took felt like chewing glass. Still, I endured. Every insult, every threat, it all fueled me. Then one night, just 3 days before the will reading, Daniel texted me. "Found something. You'll want to see this. Archive room, midnight." The company building was quiet, the hum of the air conditioning echoing through the halls. My hands trembled as I unlocked the door to the archive room. There, beneath layers of yellowed files, we found it. An old metal folder labeled Founding Agreement, Private Copy. Inside was a single document bearing both my father's and my uncle's signatures. The clause was clear, untouched, and final. In the event of both parents passing, the estate shall remain under the brother's care only until the child turns 21, at which point all assets revert in full to the rightful heir. The air left my lungs. This was it. Proof that everything my uncle built his empire on wasn't his, it was mine. I looked up at Daniel and he nodded slowly. "You have him, Lena. Everything he's done, it's over." But before I could even celebrate, a sound echoed from the hallway. Footsteps. I froze. They were heavy, deliberate, too familiar. Then I heard his voice, muffled but cold. "Check the room. She's been snooping again." My heart stopped. I slipped the document into my bag, turned off the light, and pressed myself against the wall as the door handle began to turn. I held my breath, clutching the file to my chest, every muscle tense. He was right outside, and if he found me now, it wouldn't just be my inheritance on the line, it would be my life. Because now, I had everything I needed to expose him. The courtroom-style conference room smelled like polished wood and old money. I sat near the back with my hands folded in my lap, the metal folder heavy against my thigh. Outside, the city felt ordinary. People rushing to meetings, taxis honking. While inside, the future my father wrote for me waited on a table under the lawyer's lamp. My uncle came in first, chest out, the confidence of a man who had never been questioned. Claire trailed behind him, mascara streaked but composed, trying to look as if she belonged in the center of things. My aunt hovered like a shadow, moving between the board members with the practiced smile of someone who'd always relied on influence rather than truth. The lawyer cleared his throat. He didn't read the will in a theatrical way. He simply unfolded the documents and began. For a moment, I watched sound move across faces, the smirks, the brief flicker of annoyance, the bored gestures of men who assumed the script was the only script. Then he reached the part that mattered. He produced the files Daniel and I had located, the originals, stamped and signed, the founding clause and every hidden amendment. He laid them out, one by one, with the deliberate calm of someone delivering an undeniable truth. "You will find," he said, "that the majority shares, 85%, were held by Jonathan Caldwell. Proper testamentary instruction places the estate's temporary guardianship with Robert Caldwell until the heir reaches 21. At that point, ownership reverts in full to the rightful heir." The room went thin with air. My uncle's face lost color. Murmurs rose like a physical thing. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. My aunt's smile collapsed into something raw and small. Board members exchanged glances. They had seen the mismanagement for months. Contracts that led nowhere, funds redirected, a steady decline masked by glossy PR. The evidence I'd brought, quietly arranged and undeniable, answered questions they'd only suspected in whispers. One by one, they stood. "We cannot continue under his leadership," said the chair, voice steady. "The board votes to remove Robert Caldwell as CEO, effective immediately." It felt like the ground had shifted. Men I'd once thought invincible were suddenly vulnerable, exposed by ledger lines and signatures. Legal counsel moved quickly. The transfer of assets proceeded with mechanical efficiency. The mansion, the company, the accounts, my name began to appear where his had always been. My uncle fell to his knees in front of me before anyone could stop him. "Lena," he begged, "please, My aunt sobbed, clasping at his sleeve. Claire cried openly, hands shaking. "I didn't know," she said, and her voice broke under the weight of everything I'd endured. Every instinct in me burned to answer with the same cruelty I'd been shown, to evict them, to lock the doors, to watch them scramble for the respect they never offered me. I imagined the look on my uncle's face as his chauffeured car sat in the drive for the last time. I pictured Claire standing at the gate with no one to open it for her. Instead, I stood in front of the table, the documents heavy in my hand, and I felt the weight of the years press down. All the small humiliations returned like old ghosts. But beneath them, a new voice, quieter, older, asked if I wanted my victory to be a mirror of their cruelty. I stepped back, breathed, and let the room decide around me while I decided inside. They treated me like I was nothing, made me clean their floors, serve their meals, and live like a shadow in my own family. Now everything they own has my name on it. The board wants me to fire him, and I could. I could take everything. But I don't know if I should. After everything they've done, should I forgive them? Or finally let them feel what it's like to lose everything?